Hello, vinyl community. I have some records to show you, and it's some good stuff. I'm saving the best for last, so if nothing else, forward to the end and check out the final record I'm showing. You'll want to stay tuned for that. So, quickly, Matt Hayes and I recently met up. We went to two record stores in Upland, California. Bob's Record Shack and Penny Lane Records. Both I was very pleased with. I had been to Penny Lane before, but at a previous location. But both I was pleased with, but Penny Lane especially. I really like the prices there. So, yeah. So anyway, I have some records to show you. We were meeting up for some post-birthday vinyl digging, and my birthday was on September 13th, and we met up on the 14th. So it was a great day. Thank you so much, Matt. He treated me to some Indian buffet at Aroma, I believe also in Upland, California, and it was delicious, although it could have been a little more fresh. I think we agreed on that. But anyway, you want to see some records, so let's get right down to it. I have my notes here, so if you see me looking up. Anyway, we're going to start off with an album that introduced me to this artist, and I'm a little embarrassed to say that, but it is Living in the 20th Century by Steve Miller Band. Yes, so I can admit to you that this was the album that introduced me to Steve Miller Band. Specifically, there was a music video on MTV for "I Want to Make the World Turn Around." So, and from there, I started discovering the previous albums and fell in love with the Steve Miller Band. So basically, this album is from 1987. It does have a little bit of that sound, that 80s sound. Not to the point where it's completely dated, but you can kind of tell. So basically, it's album rock, blues rock. It's a little on the short side, clocking in at under 36 minutes. Let's see. Oh yes, the closing track. I was very pleased with that one. Behind the Barn, a nice bluesy track. So I wouldn't use this album to sway people into liking Steve Miller Band, especially because the track that turned me on to this album in particular, "I Want to Make the World Turn Around," that it's a very polished track, but it's a great song. I love it to this day. So, nevertheless, I originally had that on cassette. At some point, I got the CD of it, and this is the first time I'm owning it on vinyl, so I'm pleased about that. All right, so next up, from 1979, we have "Sweet," Cut Above the Rest. This was their first album as a trio, as Brian Connolly left the band, and I believe for the most part they ended up staying a trio after that. Basically a hard rock. Let's see. You might compare them to Slade or Kiss or Mott the Hoople, and I definitely, on this album in particular, I heard elements of Queen and even Cheap Trick. So if you like any of those bands, you might like them. What to say? Two of the standout tracks for me were "Play All Night," the second track on side one. Definitely a rocking song there. And then the second track on side two, "Mother Earth." That one approaches prog. So And that's one of the things they were kind of going with this album is trying to get a little more proggy. But yeah, I guess their previous album, uh, oh, I forget what it was called now. Anyway, that one was a little more poppy, I guess. But yeah, there you go. So Sweet, Cut Above the Rest from 1979. All right, so this was my best pickup from Bob's Record Shack. Those two previous ones were also from Bob's Record Shack, but I love me some Indian music, and so we have Ravi Shankar live at the Monterey International Pop Festival. But it's everything you might expect, Indian raga music, just long jams that you can just kind of veg out to or meditate to, or, this is really music that transports you. So I was pleased to pick that up. Anytime I see Indian music, I pick it up. Well, I take that back. I visited an Indian grocery store here in Riverside, and they had a few CDs, like Bollywood type music, and then a bunch of cassettes, including a lot of Indian classical music, which I love. And I don't know, I just couldn't bring myself to buy them. It looked like most of them were used, and the packaging seemed cheap, and I was like, I don't know. But I may go back for those tapes at least, because those looked tempting. Anyway, so we're on to these were at, the remainder of the records were at Penny Lane Records, and honestly, I didn't even get through half the store, and I had already reached my limit. So yeah, so I definitely want to go back there and do a deeper dig, but I was pleased to pick up Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Brand New Day. This is from 1977, and it basically album rock. It's basically the same on both sides. So this was the return of David Clayton Thomas, and it's kind of specified by featuring David Clayton Thomas. I love his vocals. I love them so much. A couple interesting things about this album. On the second track, Dreaming is One, David is doing a duet with Chaka Khan. But it's a good song, but I don't know. They probably could have put any female singer in there and it would have worked. It didn't scream to me that this is Chaka Khan, doing a duet with on Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So a little bit of a disappointment, but not too bad. Then we have Same Old Blues, which a very, as you might suspect from the title, a bluesy song with real bluesy horns. So that was good. And where is it? One standout track for me was the second to last track, Rock and Roll Queen, a tribute to Janis Joplin. And a reviewer was basically saying that they were a little heavy-handed in their tribute to Janis Joplin. I'm not even sure what that means. I really liked it. It was a good rockin' song. So, if nothing else, get this album for that. Let's see, anything else worth noting? Oh, the last track, another standout track, Don't Explain. Very very jazzy with sweeping strings and excellent piano playing by Larry Willis. So for those two tracks alone, I recommend this album. Very good. All right, I love me some Southern rock. So this is Dickey Betts and Great Southern. And Dickey Betts is, or was the guitarist for the Allman Brothers Band. And let's see, this is from 1977. So basically just Southern rock. Let's see here. Oh, a couple of things worth noting on this one. I noticed on the inner sleeve, I don't know how well you're going to see it, but it's like, that kind of looks like Don Johnson. Well, it is Don Johnson. Yes, it is Don Johnson, because on the closing track, Bougainvillea, he co-wrote that song, and he does the backing vocals, although I don't know that you can hear him well enough to say, hey, that's Don Johnson. But yeah, this really predates, from 1977, this really predates Miami Vice, so I didn't know he was involved in music that early, I guess. And then another one worth noting is on Nothing You Can Do. That features Mickey Thomas, who is from Jefferson Starship, maybe even infamously from, because those weren't their best years, but nevertheless, now him you can pick out because he has that high voice, so he's doing backing vocals on Nothing You Can Do, so that was a good one. Definitely side 2 was more rockin', especially with Nothing You Can Do and California Blues. Those were really rockin'. But Bougainvillea does feature a really good guitar solo, as does Nothing You Can Do has a really good solo. So yeah, that's one thing I love about Southern rock. They tend to have really good guitar solos. So yeah, please pick this up, and excellent use of dog there. Yeah, so Dickey Betts and Great Southern. All right, so here we have Herb Alpert, and he's collaborating with Hugh Masekela. Of course, Herb plays the trumpet, and Hugh Masekela does the flugelhorn. This is pretty much what you would expect. There's maybe a handful of tracks on here that you definitely hear the Hugh Masekela influence, and then there's some that are totally more the smoother sound of Herb Alpert. So let's see. So this one's from 1978, basically jazz pop, world fusion. So a good listen. But if you don't like Herb Alpert, I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. All right. So one of my all-time favorite bands, Iron Butterfly. So now this one from 1970, it's Metamorphosis. So with this one, it's basically acid rock, hard rock, psych garage. Has the excellent single Easy Rider, which most of you have heard. And the escapehold there. There's the back. The back could really, in fact, the back makes a better front than the front does. Nevertheless, yeah. So with this album in particular, Doug Engel, the vocalist and keyboardist, really took it in a direction that pretty much only he was on board for, trying to get a little bit into funk and some acoustic music. and the rest of the band was just not on board for it. So he ended up doing a lot of it. I'm not sure how they coordinated that, but yeah. Nevertheless, I like it a lot, actually. It's certainly not their best, but I really enjoyed it. And particularly for the song Easy Rider, that's just such a classic, right? Yeah, so that's basically that one. Metamorphosis by Iron Butterfly. All right, just a couple more. So, originally I was going to show this one last, but I had to move the one before this to the last position, and you'll find out why. All right, so this one, I'm a Monkees fan. So Dolenz Jones, Boyce and Hart, Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart. I believe that's Tommy Boyce and that's Bobby Hart. They did a lot of the songwriting for the Monkees, and I once read a book by Tommy Boyce about how to write a hit song, and I still haven't written a hit song. But I do experimental music, so nevertheless, so this is good. In fact, it's considered one of the Monkees' more consistent albums, but there's perhaps a heavier influence from Boyce and Hart, and I believe at least on one song, maybe more, Tommy Boyce does the vocals, which was kind of a letdown for me, but because it's all about Mickey Dolenz and Davy Jones, but Mickey Dolenz in particular did have some creative input on this and wrote some of the songs. What can I say about it? This is from 1976, and it's known as the first Monkees reunion, even though it was only 2 members. And of course, it's AM pop, bubblegum pop, soft rock, and it does feature the song "You and I," which was later re-recorded for the Just Us album. But this is considered the better version because it has Mickey Dolenz on vocals. So, yeah. Anyway, there you go. A good listen, definitely. And if you're a Monkees completist, I highly recommend it. So, Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart. All right, and the last one. Now, originally I wasn't looking in the bargain bins. The bargain bins at Penny Lane are on the floor, basically. And then Matt happened to point out that, there's bargain bins down there. And I was like, oh, yeah. And so I got down there, I was looking. One of the first albums I saw was this one. I was like, okay, this looks interesting. So it's Brian Auger and the Trinity, B4. And this is going to go down as one of the greatest blind buys I've ever made. So basically, this is from 1970. It's art rock, fusion, jazz rock, prog. What a surprise this was! What a surprise! I highly, highly recommend this album. First of all, let me read some of this because just the description on here is just excellent. Okay. The right elements come into contact. The flower is pollinated. The flower dies, the old petals fall away. The new bud forms and ripens. What will bring it to bloom? Maybe the hours spent screaming up and down miles of motorway, the hours spent waiting at airports, the hours spent at home with the people we love, the hours spent sweating on stage trying to get the message across, all that, and then the hours of discussion with other people and with each other, helping us understand each other, drawing us more together, making the groove tighter until our lives are the music and the music our lives. All these things form the sunlight which makes the flower bloom. Then you just need the fire and the will to do it. How's that for a description? Wow. All right, so the first, I mean, I love every track on here. I absolutely love every track. But the first one that really caught my attention, because sometimes when I'm listening to music, I'm not necessarily looking at the liner notes or what have you. And I was like, wait, this is a very familiar track. So the second track, Pavane, is their interpretation. Keep in mind, it's kind of art rock, fusion, jazz rock, prog. Their interpretation of the French classical composer Gabriel Fauré, his very famous Pavane, is one of those that when you hear it, you'll recognize it. I love their interpretation of it. Fantastic. Oh, what else on here? Oh, the last track on the first side is Maiden Voyage. Of course, that's a Herbie Hancock song, so they do their version of that. Oh, this one. Listen here, the first track on side 2 is fascinating. So it makes use of 4 drummers. So let's see, it has Clive Thacker playing lead drums and fill-ins, Mickey Waller playing cymbal rhythms, Barry Reeves playing snare drum rhythms and cowbell, and Colin Allen playing bass drum rhythms. And then it has 2 bass players, David Ambrose playing top bass line and fills, and Roger Sutton playing bottom bass line. And it's like 9 plus minutes of just jamming, and it's so good. So good. And then they followed it up with one of my all-time favorite compositions, one of the most beautiful songs in the world, Albinoni's Adagio, and they call it Adagio per Arci e Organo. I just slaughtered that, but that's okay. Now this one, I think they stuck a little too closely to the original composition. They were trying to do it justice, and yeah, I mean, it worked. I like it, but I have to say I like the Doors version better. Yes, the Doors did Adagio, Albinoni's Adagio. Yeah, and I think they did it better, but this is still a very good version. And just quickly here, it says, playing Albinoni's Adagio is like building the Parthenon around you. I think somebody said that architecture is frozen music, and it really came home to me while playing this particular piece. The thing that I really went for was to preserve the mood of the original, and the thing we learned while trying to get it together was why orchestras have conductors. Oh, yes. Yeah, and then that's followed up with Just You, Just Me. Yeah. So there's some instrumental tracks on here, some with vocals, but my goodness, this was a fantastic listen. I highly recommend it. And I believe this was the cheapest album I found at $2 in the bargain bin. A blind buy that really, really, really paid off. So, all right. Matt, thank you again for taking me out to lunch for my birthday. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and I will see you next time.